Today, we're going to try to do something, well, pretty ambitious. We're going to attempt to build a unified theory of Elon Musk. How do you get from a traumatic childhood in South Africa to landing rockets on Mars? Using Ashley Vance's biography as our guide, we're going to try to connect those dots.
All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the central paradox of the man himself. Then, we're going to dig deep into his past. I'm talking a really tough childhood, the dot-com boom, and the time he almost lost everything, all to figure out, what actually makes this guy tick.
Okay, first things first. To really get a handle on Elon Musk, you've got to understand just how strange the guy can be. And honestly, there's no better example of this than a dinner conversation the author Ashley Vance had with him.
So, you got to understand, Musk wasn't just talking smack about a competitor here. Nope. He was voicing a very real, very serious existential fear that his good friend, Larry Page, the co-founder of Google, could accidentally create an AI that wipes out all of humanity. And he was dead serious.
Right? So that's the big question, isn't it? What kind of person thinks like that? I mean, who worries about their friend accidentally ending the world? To even begin to unpack that, we have to go way back. Back to a childhood that was, let's just say, anything but normal. So that insane drive that Musk is famous for, it didn't come from Silicon Valley. It was forged, really, in the fire of a hyper-masculine and often pretty brutal culture in Pretoria, South Africa.
I mean, look at this timeline. His early life was just this wild, compressed series of events. You've got these incredible intellectual breakthroughs on one hand, and then just profound physical trauma on the other, all of it fueling this desperate, burning need to just get out. And let's be clear, this wasn't just some kids roughhousing in the schoolyard. No way. This was a traumatic, vicious attack that put him in the hospital. He even needed reconstructive surgery for it years later. It's not hard to see how that experience would cement a certain worldview, right? That he was an outsider in a pretty hostile world.
And this, right here, this is the key. While all the other kids were out playing sports, this bookish, bullied kid comes to a pretty incredible conclusion. He decides that his whole mission in life is to, and I quote, strive for greater collective enlightenment. I mean, wow. He's basically deciding to expand the scale of human consciousness. As a teenager. So he finally makes it to North America. And that same intensity that defined his childhood, well, it becomes both his superpower and his kryptonite during the absolute wild west of the first dot-com boom. And this is a great little story. His pursuit of his future wife, Justine, is a perfect example of how he operates. It has that same relentless, almost Terminator-like focus he'd later bring to his companies. As she famously said, the man simply does not take no for an answer. Ever.
So at his first company, Zip2, you really see this clash of styles. On one side, you have Musk, this brilliant but totally self-taught coder. And on the other, you have these seasoned professional engineers that the investors brought in. And boy, did they clash. He thought they were slow and bogged down in process. They looked at his code and thought it was a total mess. So he ends up learning some really painful lessons about corporate politics the hard way. He gets pushed out as CEO not just at Zip2, but at his next company, which became PayPal. But this time was different. Instead of fighting it, he actually showed incredible restraint. He supported the new CEO, kept his head down, and quietly bought out more shares. And that one move, well, that's what made him a very, very rich man. $180 million. That's what he walked away with after taxes when eBay bought PayPal. This was it. This was the go big or go home money, the capital he needed to stop building internet companies and start chasing those huge, crazy childhood dreams of his. We're talking space travel and electric cars. Okay, so he's got his fortune. And what does he do? He goes all in, puts every last dollar into SpaceX and Tesla. And this leads him straight into the brick wall of the 2008 financial crisis. I mean, this was a year that would have completely broken almost anyone. It is really, really hard to overstate just how much pressure he was under. Think about it. Both of his companies, these grand, world-changing ventures, were circling the drain at the exact same time. Oh, and the entire global economy was collapsing around him. Just a total nightmare scenario. And we're not talking about paper losses on a stock portfolio. He was personally flat out broke. He'd poured every single cent he had into keeping these companies alive, borrowing money from friends just to make payroll.
And that kind of stress, it starts to show up in some pretty terrifying ways.
Yeah, the pressure was taking a massive toll, both physically and mentally. But this is the crucial part of the story. It was surviving this absolute abyss that cemented his reputation. This is where the legend of Elon Musk's impossible resilience was really born.
Okay, so how do we tie all of this together? How do we build that unified theory of Elon we talked about? How does that brutal childhood, that trial by fire in the dot-com world, and surviving 2008, how does all that lead to these incredibly audacious goals and his unique way of thinking?
It really comes down to his core intellectual tool, which is something called first principles thinking. It sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. Instead of looking at how things have always been done, reasoning by analogy, he boils everything down to its most basic, fundamental truths. So he doesn't ask, how do we make existing rockets a little bit better? He asks, what is a rocket made of? And what do the laws of physics say is the absolute cheapest way I can put those materials together to get to orbit? It's a total game changer.
And what's really wild is that this isn't some new obsession for him. This has been the game plan from the very beginning. Way back in college, long before he was famous, he made a list of the 3 things he thought would most affect the future of humanity. And he's basically been working his way down that list ever since, systematically.
So here it is, our unified theory of Elon. That brutal childhood forged a relentless, almost inhuman drive. The dot-com era gave him the skills and, crucially, the money. And surviving the abyss of 2008 locked in his absolute conviction. Conviction in what? In the mission he set for himself as a bullied teenager, to save humanity by making us a multiplanetary species. Now, as you can imagine, that kind of singular, intense focus, it doesn't just win you friends. It's earned him legions of die-hard followers, but also some incredibly powerful critics. It's created this massive divide over what his ultimate legacy is actually going to be.
So you've got 2 camps, right? On one side, you have his supporters, people like Google's Larry Page, who see him as this force of nature, pushing humanity forward. Their argument is, hey, every great idea sounds crazy at first. But then you have the critics, like the famous academic Vaclav Smil, who basically see him as a showman, building what he calls overhyped toys for rich people while the world's real problems go unsolved. So which is it, savior or showman? In the end, the jury's still out. The answer really depends on one thing. Does he pull it off? Do his rockets actually get us to Mars? Do his cars and batteries actually change the world? He's making one of the biggest, most audacious bets in human history. And his legacy? Well, that story is still being written chapter by chapter right before our eyes.